So guys, today we are going to discuss one of the important concept, right, when it comes to web application development. So basically, what is that concept? That is concept is cookies. So not only we are going to discuss cookies, but also we are going to discuss what are sessions. What is the difference between cookies and sessions? What are the different kind of cookies? What are the different kind of sessions? When to use cookies? When to use sessions? How cookies are working in web application between server and client, and how the sessions are going to be work. In case of cookies, where the data is going to be stored. In case of a session, where the data is going to be stored. In case of cookies, what response header is going to be set by the server? In case of cookies, right, what request header is going to be sent by the browser? Similarly, what is going to be happening in the case of a session? So all these things we are going to discuss practically. So right, we are going to discuss practically one by one. So first of all, we need to understand why we need sessions and the cookies in a web application. See, guys, if you remember, whenever we are accessing any data, we are using one protocol called HTTP. So any kind of a web application you take into consideration, right? Whether you are accessing from mobile phone, from tablet, from desktop, right? From whatever, right? The devices you are using. If you are accessing some services or accessing some right pages, then in that case, it is using something called HTTP, that is a Hypertext Transport Protocol. So basically, that is a protocol. That HTTP protocol is stateless. So can anybody tell me, right? Can anybody explain me what do you mean by stateless? What do you mean by
Every
stateless?
request is new. Every request is new. It is not stored, the previous request.
Exactly. Exactly. So stateless means what? Now, whenever a client send a request to the server will treat it as an independent request. The server will treat that request as an independent request. And in the case of HTTP, right, the server is never going to store any data. The server is not going to store any data related to the client. Who is the client? Whether this is the first request coming from client, whether this is the second request, this is the third request, this is the repeated request. No idea, right? No idea. So no idea means the server have no idea related to the client information. So every time the browser or the client send a request to the server, server will treat it as a brand new request. So in that case, what will happen? Now, whenever we are developing any kind of web applications, right? So web application means we are navigating from multiple pages. For example, if you take the example of a e-commerce application, so in e-commerce application, once you logged in, or whether you logged in or not logged in, right? So you can access the product listing page, you can access the product details page, you can access your profile information, you can access your order history information. So basically, what happening? What happening means we are right. Once you log into the application, then we can navigate right from one page to another pages. So in that case, if I'm navigating from one page to another page, means what? That means in that case, the browser is sending different requests to the server. So in that case, how the server is going to identify whether this request is coming from that particular client or that particular user? Because without the client or server information, it cannot handle the data. For example, you added a few product into the session into the cart. If the server have no idea whether this product is related to that particular user, then how it is going to return the data? So in that, and to handle this, right, to handle this scenario, what we are going to use, we are going to use session and cookies. So that, right, session and cookies means you have to remember these are nothing but a way for web application to remember information about the users as they move from one page to another. So basically, whenever you move from one page to another, then this session and cookies are the concept which is basically used in web application to store the user information. This user information based on the technique or based on the concept, right, based on the mechanism, whatever you are using, it might be stored on the server or it might be stored on the client. So where it is going to store, how it is going to store, how the things are happening behind the scene, all these things we are going to discuss one by one. So first of all, why we need session and cookies? The answer is because of the HTTP protocol. So as HTTP protocol is a stateless protocol, so the server doesn't remember by default any information related to the client. So every time the client send a request to the server will consider it as a brand new request. But sometimes what we need to write. Sometimes what we need to store the user information, and that user information we need to share between multiple requests. For example, see, for example, if you log in, so do you need to pass the login information again and again in each request? No. Can I ask the user to provide the login information in each page? No. That means what? The user will log in one, but that login information I need to store either in the session or cookies so that the subsequent request can send or pass those information, and the server can identify, yes, this is the server user. Okay, accordingly, I need to process the request. So for that particular reason, you need to use session and cookies in web applications. Clear?
Yes.
Right. So what are the the role of a session and a cookies? We have discussed now. So if someone asks you, okay, that is fine, we understood that session and cookies are nothing but going to store user information. In case of cookies, the information is going to be stored in the browser, or you can say client machine. In case of a session, it is going to store in the server, right? And how it is going to handle, or you can say how the internal working mechanism is going to be there. That is what we are going to discuss in depth. Before that, if someone asks you, can you provide me some real-time use cases of a session and cookies? Then you have to provide this example, right? User authentication status, whether the user is logged in or not. That user ID, that username, you can store in the session or cookies, and then you can decide whether the user is logged in or not. User preferences, for example, you access one application, that application provides the data in multiple language, or that application having multiple theme, dark theme, right? Some different kind of theme, and that preference you choose. Yeah, I want the response always in English language. I want to use the dark theme. So this information, do I need to pass in every page? No. So you have to set one, and that information will be reused multiple times. For example, you develop one e-commerce application. So whenever you add some item, right, that item is going to be stored in the session or cookies, right? So that whenever you add one by one, these items are going to be added into the cart one by one, and then you can process how you are going to process. For example, you can go to the cart page. In the cart page, it will show you all the items from the session, and then you can proceed for the checkout. If you are developing on a form data, multi-step form. Multi-step form means in the form one you are taking the user basic details, in form two you are taking the bank details, in form three you are taking the KYC information, right? In form four you are taking the address information, right? Then in that case, other than this, you are having another form where you are taking the academics details. So in that case, I cannot take all the information in a single page. So I have to go step by step. So one step completed, that data I cannot store in the database. So where I need to store the data, I need to store the data in the session. So one all the forms are filled, then only I can process the data and store the data in the database. So whatever all I'm showing here, apart from this user preferences, all these three applications I'm going to discuss. So I will show you how you can manage the user authentication within the session and cookies, how you can manage the shopping cart app content, right, using session and cookies, how you can create a multi-form applications, right? And even if you want, right, once I discuss this thing, this is going to be a task for you. Clear? Is that clear?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Now, so and guys, remember in ASP.NET Core MVC, they have provided by default support to, right, what I can say, session and cookies. You do not need to do anything special. Right, very easily you can create, read, update, and delete cookies. So let us try to understand cookies first, and then we will discuss, what I can say, session. So what is cookies? So cookie is nothing but it is a small piece of information. Guys, remember, whenever you are using cookie, maximum cookie size is going to be, per cookie size is going to be 4 KB. If you are trying to store more data, which is more than 4 KB, then it is not going to handle that scenario. So cookies are basically going to store small amount of data. Where this data is going to be stored? This data is going to be stored in the client browser. Where inside what location, where exactly in the client browser, I will show you practically. Where this cookie data is going to be stored in the client browser, I'm going to show you Practically. So basically, cookies means it is going to store small piece of information. Where this cookie data is going to be stored, it is going to stored on the client device. Clear? So what is the real-time scenario? You can store the user identification like username, ID. You can store the authentication token. For example, you are getting the JWT token. That what you can store. You can also manage the session. Session management means, guys, remember. So cookies is fine, but whenever you are going to use session, internally the session is going to use the concept called cookies. So how the session is going to use cookies concept, we'll see that later part. But for now, let us try to keep more focus on the cookies concept. So what is cookie? Cookie is nothing but it is a small or a very less amount of information that a web server send to a web browser. So web server will send this information to the web browser. The web browser is going to store this information within the client device. Client device means it can be your laptop, desktop, it can be your mobile application, it can be a tablet. Wherever you install the browser, inside that browser local memory, it is going to store the data. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. So we have already discussed what are the real-time use cases. Now let us try to understand how cookies is working in real-time application, right? So for now you have already ready to understand there are two parties. One is client, another one is server. The client send a request to the server. Client initially, or let's assume client make the first request to the server. So when the client send the initial request, so at that time, does the client have any knowledge related to cookies? So when the first request is sent by the client to the server, does the client have any idea related to any cookies information?
No.
Yeah. So in that case, server will receive the request, server will check any cookie information is there? No. So in that case, the server will process the request. After processing the request, the server is going to set the cookie information. So for example, we want to store some data in the cookie. What data? Let's assume the login information. Whatever the user ID, username, that's what we want to store in the cookie. So in that case, the server is going to create two cookies. One cookie for username, another cookie for user ID. So guys, remember, whenever you are using the cookies concept, for each cookie, it is going to create a separate header in the response. See, whenever the server return the data, always return data. Data means in the response header. Whenever the client send any data, it is going to be in the request header. So in this case, the server is going to set two cookie information. One is for username, another one is for user ID. Then in which header it is going to set? Definitely it is going to be in the response header, and inside the response header, for cookie it is going to create one set cookie header. So one set cookie for user ID, another set cookie for username. So if you are storing two cookie, then two set cookie header in the response header collection. If you are storing one cookie, then one cookie header in the response header. If you are storing 10 cookies information, then there is 10 cookies in the response header. Clear? And what is the header name? The header name is going to be set cookie. Clear?
It is being set by the server one, right?
Obviously. So who is going to send the data? First of all, the data needs to be sent by the server because the client have no idea. So whenever the client going to make the first request, the client have no idea related to any session and cookies. So it is the responsibility of the server to set the session and cookies data. And in this case, it is going to set the data in the response header. And in the response header, you will see a header right with the name set cookie. And again, for cookie, one header. Clear? Clear or not?
Yeah, it will be same for all the browsers, the cookie.
Yes, it is browser independent. So any browser you take into consider, this is going to be common,
Okay.
right? Right. And in this case, whatever the data you are going to store, that is going to be stored in the form of a key value pair. Key value pair means user ID is going to be the key. Whatever its value, that is also going to be stored there. Username is the key, and corresponding value is going to be there. So in that case, so this information will be set by the server, and this information will be received by the client. Right along the same line, along the same time, the server is going to set some cookie ready settings. So cookie settings means whether the cookie is a persistent cookie or whether the cookie is a non-persistent cookie. How long the cookie, if it is a persistent cookie, then how long this cookie is going to be valid? What is the expiration time? Whether this cookie is being accessed by the JavaScript, whether this cookie information can be sent using HTTP protocol or it is only possible to send the information using HTTPS protocol. So all these informations are going to be set by the server. Clear? I will show you all these things practically. So now, once the server return the response, that response is received by the client and the client automatically. So here on the client or in the browser, you have no control. Everything is going to be managed automatically, right? So browser will receive the response. Browser check whatever the response cookies are there. Then this response cookies, right? Once browser receive, it is going to store in the application storage of the browser. So in the browser, there is something called application storage. Okay, so for example, if you look at this, right, F12, so there is an application. So in the application, there is a storage. In the storage, there is cookies. And in the cookies, for domain, right, for domain, it is going to create some cookies. So this is where the session and the cookies information, or so there is nothing called session in browser. Anything coming to browser, it is a cookie. So that information it is going to store here. So even once I create my application, I will show you this is my domain name, and within this domain name, these are the cookies which is set by the right what I can say server, and this is how the data is going to be stored in the browser. Clear? Clear or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Once the cookies data is stored in the right browser, then when it is going to send the next request, then it is going to check whether for this domain, for this domain, is there is there any cookie stored in the browser's ready storage location? Yes, it is stored. Then it will fetch those cookies, right? And then in this case, right, at the time of a response, it is getting one cookie, right? One cookie in the sense if you are storing username and user ID, two cookie information it is going to store. And in that case, it is going to create two keys here. But while it is going to send the data to the server, it will combine multiple cookies into a single cookie header. So in the request header, it will create a key or you can say header with the name cookie. And inside that cookie header, it is going to store all the cookies separated by semicolon. So one cookie user ID equals to whatever the value, semicolon. Username, whatever the value, semicolon. Accordingly, it will send all the cookies information using a single request header to the server. Clear? Clear?
Yeah.
Now, once the server receives this request, now it is going to check whether whether any cookies information are there, and obviously you are the one who is going to write the server code. So if you need that this particular method, I need to fetch the cookies information. Then in that case, definitely you have already written those code. So those code is going to check the data from the cookies, right? If data is available, you can process the request. Otherwise, whatever you want to do, to return error or whatever, right? That what you need to do. So once the server process the data, again he will return the response. Again, in this case, if you want, you can update the cookies information. For example, one user ID is there, username is there. Now that value is updated. So that updated value you can also return from this request. Clear? Clear or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let us try to understand what are the different types of cookies. So first of all, I'll explain you the theoretical part, the interview questions, and then I will show you the practical ready implementation. So there are two types of cookies. One is persistent cookie, another one is a non-persistent cookies or session cookies. So what is the difference between these two? So the persistent cookies means they remains even you close the browser or tab. For example, you open the application, you access some pages where the cookies are being used. Then if you close the application or if you close the tab, again if you open the same application, then those cookies information is going to be there. For example, Facebook application. For example, Amazon application. So whenever you are logging, so they are providing one option called a remember me checkbox. So once you click that checkbox, means what? It is going to create a persistent cookie. That validity is going to be either 1 month, 7 months, 6 months, 1 year, whatever you said, that is going to be there. So what exactly is the meaning of a persistent cookie is? Now these cookies remain stored after even the browser is closed or the tab is closed. So that when right once you log in and once you click on that remember me, the once you close the browser, again if you log in, right? Again if you log in, right? Sorry. Again if you open the application, then it will not ask you to re-log in. Automatically it will log in. Why? Because the session of because the cookies information is already there. And the same time, right? Here also it is going to tell what type of a cookies is this, right? Whether it is a right what I can say session cookies or whether it is a rate persistent I mean what exactly I can say uh, non-persistent cookie, that is also it is going to tell. For example, if the expire time is there, right? So if the expire time is there within the cookie, say it is a persistent cookie. So persistent cookie means if you close the browser, then also the cookie data is going to be there. Clear what do you mean by persistent cookie? So what do you mean by persistent cookie? Persistent cookie means the server is going to set a time or a duration how long this cookie is going to be valid by the browser. Clear?
Where these are stored internally?
Sorry?
Where this persistent cookie is stored internally? In the hard disk or
This is what I'm showing now. It is going to store on the client machine only. So
what?
this is the client machine. This is the so I open the browser. This is the browser developer tool. Here you can say application storage cookies, and for each right application in this case, right, whatever the application I open. So for this application, whatever the URL I'm accessing, for each URL you will see a list of cookies. So this is going to be stored in the client machine only. Clear?
Yeah.
Right now. So
Sir,
persistent
in case
cookie.
of
Yes, please.
sir, in case of these persistent cookies, do we need to
I'm
set that
I'm
expiry
not say
time
I'm
or
not to
it is
discuss. I'm not to discuss till now what do you mean by session cookies. First of all, keep focus on the persistent cookie. Persistent cookie means what? The server need to set one expire time when the cookie is going to be expired. If the server doesn't set the expire time, then it is going to be a session cookie. So in this case, if you see, so these are session cookies. So if the time is set, this is persistent cookie. If the time is not set, then it is a non-persistent cookie or a session cookie. So what is the difference between a non-persistent cookie or session cookies? For example, you open one right banking application, you log in, you access the pages, and you close the browser or you close the tab. Again, when you open that website, is it going to allow you to log in automatically or again you have to log in?
When we need to know.
Why? Because they are using the session cookies. So session cookies means what? Now once you close the browser or once you close the tab, that cookie is going to be deleted. Once the cookie is deleted, then definitely it will ask you to again log in or whatever. Clear? So what is the difference between these two? The session cookies means they are going to be deleted automatically once you close the browser or once you become ideal for some amount of a time. So that is what the non-persistent cookies. The example is online banking side, any financial applications, they are going to use session cookies. And how you can set? Like in case of a persistent cookie, we need to set the duration when the cookie is going to be expired. And in case of a non-persistent cookie, we do not need to set the duration. By default, the default timing is 15 minutes. Default is 20 minutes. If you become ideal for 20 minutes, also that cookie is going to be deleted automatically. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the use of a persistent and non-persistent? That is clear now. Now what I need to do, we need to understand how to work with the cookies. I mean, how you can store the data in the cookie, how you can retrieve the data from the cookie, how you are going to perform the right, remove the data from the cookies collection. Let us try to understand. So first of all, you need to understand how to write store the data in the cookies. First of all, so who is going to store the data? The server is going to store the data. So if the server is going to store the data, then it is going to store the data in the response object or in the request object?
Response object.
Response object. So basically, ASP.NET Core MVC provide this response.cookies collection. So this is a dictionary, or you can say collection. So to this collection, you can append any number of cookies. The cookies are going to be stored in the form of a key value pair. So here user ID is going to be the key. The value is this one. Here username is the key. The value is this one. So this is what the response cookies, right? I mean, how you are going to add the cookies into the right what I can say response header. But at the same time, if you do not provide this cookie option, that is fine. Whatever the default values that will come into the picture. But at the same time, if you want to optimize, right, what is the cookies, right, how long the cookie is going to be valid, what are the path they can access, whether the JavaScript is going to allow, right, I mean, access this information or not. So for that purpose, you need to use this cookie option, which is the options class option, and in this case, this is optional. If you provide, it is fine. If you do not provide, then also it is going to be fine. So in this case, what I'm saying, a domain name specify to which domain the cookies apply to, whatever your website, that what you need to provide. Expire means how long this cookie is going to be valid. So in this case, if you set this expire means what? That means it is going to be a persistent, right? Path means which pages can access this cookie. And if you provide slash, slash means entire website will access the cookie. Secure true means what? That it means it is always, right? It is always going to use HTTPS protocol. If you are sending request to the HTTP, then cookie will not work. HTTPS, right? HTTP only means it can only, right? Right? HTTP only means JavaScript is not going to access this one. If you are writing some JavaScript code and if you want to read the cookies value, then that is not possible if you set this value to true. Maximum age means what? And this is an alternative way to set the expire time. And is essential means sometimes what happens, now cookies are essential. But if you remember, whenever if you open some of the site, they're asking please accept the cookies or something like this. So if you accept, they're going to store the data on, right? That information is going to be stored in your browser. Otherwise, if you reject, then the cookies information are not going to be stored on the browser. Sometimes what happens, yeah, sometimes what happens, now cookies are essential for our application to behave correctly. For example, if I'm storing the login user information in the cookies, then it is mandatory for the client to store the data in the cookies. So in that case, if I'm setting it is essential to true, means what? Means any consent policies, if they are set, they are going to be bypassed. And in that case, that cookie is always going to be stored on the browser. Clear?
Sir, one point. Message expires is there, right?
Both are going to do the same thing. Expire means when it is going to right expire, and maximum age means again what is the current time, right after right to this current time how long it is going to be valid. Here you are explicitly exact date you are specifying when it is going to, right, what I can say, it is going to be right when exactly it is going to expire. And here also you are setting that expire time in an alternative way, that is for this current, after from this current time how long it is going to be valid. So alternative both are going to do the same thing. Clear? So whatever the current date time plus how many days that the cookie is going to be valid, that is what Max is going to tell. Expire means exactly you have to specify the date and the time when it is going to expire. Clear?
Access means from what time I have access, from there it will increase again 7 days.
It is
Right?
not what time you access, like when this cookie is being created by the server.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Clear, guys? Is that clear how to store the data in the cookies?
Yeah.
Okay. So how to read the data from the cookie? Now let us try to understand how to read the data from the cookies. So if you want to read the data from the cookies, then what object you need to use? I mean request object or response object?
Request.
Definitely it is going to be the the request object. Why? Because browser, whatever the cookies information going to send, it is going to send in the request object only. So in that case, so this cookie is a collection of right collection. Collection means it is a dictionary. So to this cookies collection, as it is a dictionary, you can specify the key name. So request data cookie. Suppose I want to paste the username key. I have to access the request data cookies collection. I need to pass the username. Other option is also there, right? As it is a dictionary, you can also make use of this contents key to ensure whether this key is present in the cookies collection or not. Similarly, the way you apply the dictionary, so this is a dictionary only. So from the dictionary, I'm going to check whether this key is available. If it is available, then please paste the data. If it is not available, then it will go to the else block, right? So if it is available, then you can paste the data and then you can operate whatever operation you want to do, you can do it. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So similarly to delete the cookies, so where we need to delete the cookies from the response. But here, what is important, guys, remember, whenever you are going to delete the cookie, if you are using the cookie options, for example, if I have created the cookie option, then whatever option you specified here, for example, what is the path, what is the domain, these two things is important while you are deleting the cookie. Whatever the domain path you set, if you don't set, that is fine. If you set the domain and path, then again, while deleting the cookie, you have to create the cookie option and you have to specify the same option. And here you need to use the delete method. Clear, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let us proceed and understand this thing with one real-time example. So let me first create one ASP.NET Core MVC application. So what functionality I'm going to discuss? I'm going to discuss login with that remember me functionality. So how you can implement login along with the remember me functionality to show you both persistent and non-persistent cookies. So let me first go ahead and create a new project within the my projects folder. Then click on the next button. Then click on the next create button. So which is going to create the project. So once the project is created, right, let me first go ahead and create the model. So first of all, what I need to provide the login information. For login information, what is required? User data required. For storing the user data, you need a model. So first of all, go ahead and create one model, and that model is going to be my user model. So in this user model, I'm going to store some information. What information I want to capture? I want to store the user ID, which is my unique identifier. I want to store the username, password, and the full name. So see here, you can use this null collapsing operator to ensure this is a non-nullable type. Otherwise, you can initialize with the default value. So whatever I'm doing here, this is the same as a string.empty. So now, next what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create a one in-memory user store. So currently, I'm not going to use database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one static in-memory store, or you can say in-memory collection as my, or you can say this is going to be my fake database. Fake database means a dummy database. So instead of working with the actual database, here we are creating a list of a collection, and we are going to work with this list of a collection. So here you can see I'm creating two user. One is John, another is Jenny. Password, whatever you can give. So let me provide a very simple password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is going to be my password. Now this is my validate user method. So this method is going to take username and password and going to check whatever the username password the client provided, whether it is available within this user collection. If it is available, then that user data it is going to return. Otherwise, it is going to return null. So this is going to fetch the user based on the user ID. So whatever the user ID you pass, if that user ID available within this collection, that user information it is going to return. So both are nullable type. Why? Because it is also possible that whatever the username and password provided by the user, right, while login, they might be invalid. So in that case, it is going to return null. So to handle or to return nullable type, we are using this operator, null operator. And same in the case of a get user by ID. So now what I need to do, so this is my user service. So next what I need to do, I need to create a view model. So what is the use of a view model? Now, I'm going to create one login page. In that login page, I'm going to take the user ID, username, right? I mean username and password. Along with I'm going to create one checkbox, and that remember me checkbox, it is going to a boolean value which is going to throw right store true and false. If the user selected, it is going to true, means in that case it is going to create a persistent cookie. If the user is not selected, that means that value is going to be false. In that case, it is going to create a non-persistent cookie. So in that case, let me go ahead and create one view model. So this view model is going to be have three properties at least. What are those properties? Username, password, and remember me. And I want to show the password in a asterisk mark so that the plain text will not be visible. That is the reason why I'm using this data type dot password attribute. Next, I need to create the account controller. So within the account controller, I'm going to provide the method to redirect it to the dashboard after login page and the dashboard page. So two pages I'm going to develop within this account controller. Again, for the login page, I'm going to have a two action method. One action method is for showing the login page. Another action method is for handling the data. So once you fill up the form and submit the button, that is going to handle. So in this case, you can see I'm going to store two cookies. One cookie is going to be user ID, another cookie is going to be the username. So the user related information I want to store in the cookie. Cookie means it is going to store in the client machine. So this is my user store service class, right, which I have created. And using this service class, I'm going to consume this validate user and get by ID method. So this user service, I will write registered into the dependency injection container. That instance is going to be acceptable by the constructor of this class. So that instance I'm going to I mean that user store service I'm going to register into the dependency injection. So this is my login method. It's very simple. See what I'm doing here, right? So first of all, what I'm doing. Now, once the user redirected to this login page, for example, when you open the application, first time means is the cookies available? When the request coming for the first time, is the cookies available?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
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 So no means this if condition will not execute. So in that case, it will return the view by passing this view model that login page is going to be rendered. In the login page, whenever you provide the username and password, whether you checked or unchecked the checkbox and click on the submit button, then this post version of the login action method is going to execute. So whatever the data you provided, that data I'm going to capture within my login view model. Here, first of all, I need to check whether the model state is valid. If valid, that is fine. Otherwise, we'll stay in the same view by showing the model error. Second thing, whatever the username and password the user is provided, we need to validate whether this is valid or not. So to that purpose, what I'm going to do, user service, and within the user service, this validate user method is there. That is what I'm going to call. If I'm getting null, means what? That this is invalid. So in that case, we need to display this invalid username and password error message, and we need to stay in the same view. If this user is not null, what exactly it means? It means user is valid. So in that case, what I'm doing, I'm setting the cookie options. I want to apply the cookies throughout my entire website. All the pages should access. It should only be accessed using HTTPS protocol. And this is essential. Without this cookie, my application will not perform as expected. And this is going to be also, this secure true means always going to be HTTPS. HTTP true means no JavaScript. And this is my cookie options. The other thing what I need to check, remember me. So if the remember me is true, means it is going to be a persistent cookie. So within the options of expire property, I'm setting how long this cookie is going to be there. So it is going to be valid for 7 days. If it is not in that case, if remember me is not set, then in that case I'm setting this expiry to null. But if you comment this line, that is also fine. Clear? And this is what we have already discussed. So what is the cookie name key? Whatever the corresponding value, always it is going to be in the form of a string. And this is my option object. Similarly, cookie username, whatever the username and that option. And after storing the data in the cookie, we are redirecting to the dashboard page. In the dashboard page, first of all, we will check whether the cookie user ID exists. I mean in the request cookie, if this cookie user ID is not exist, let me redirect it to the login page. Again, if this user ID is exist, then we are going to retrieve the value and it should be an integer value. If it is unable to write cast, then we need to redirect it to the login page. Similarly, if that is valid, if I mean the cookie is valid, it is able to cast to integer type, then I'm fetching the user information from the get user by ID method by calling this get user by ID method using the user stub service. If the user value is not null, then we are redirecting to the login page that user is not exist anymore. So please log in. And if the user data is fine, then we are returning, we are rendering the dashboard page by passing the username. So in the dashboard page, we can show whatever the data you want to show. And this is my logout method. So in the logout method, I'm just calling this one. I'm deleting the cookie. So in this case, if you see, I'm creating this cookie options. So what I need to do, right? I'm not specifying any, you can say domain. I'm not specifying any path. So by default, it is applicable to all. So in that case, I don't need to create the cookie options. But if you are having path other than this, or if you are having the domain set, then again, you have to create a cookie option object here, then you need to pass that is as part of the second parameter. Now, I'm not passing that, but if you want, you can pass. So now, here what I'm doing, I'm just deleting these two cookies and redirecting to the login page. Now, let's assume this user is logged in. And again, this user checked it at a checked box. And once he log in, he will redirect to the dashboard page. And then he accessing some other pages as well. And then he closed the browser. Again, when you open the browser and when you try to access this particular website, again, this login method is going to be execute fast. And in the login method, it is checking whether this data is available in the cookie and 100% this data is available. So he will not log in again. So he will redirect it to the dashboard page directly. Clear? Clear?
Yes.
Right. So now let us create the required views. First of all, let me go ahead and create the login view. How to create? So add view. So let me take the name login. So right click, add view, treasure view. Give the view name as login.cshtml. So this is going to be my login view. So in the login view, it's very simple. It will ask the user to enter the username, the password, and it is going to have one input, a checkbox, remember me, and this is the login button. Any validation error which is not specific to any model properties, that is going to be displayed in the validation summary. So this is going to be my login method. If you want to specify that controller name, you can also specify what is the controller name. The controller name is going to be account. This is optional, but if you want, you can also specify. This is going to be my login page. Next, what I need to do, I need to prepare my dashboard page. So right click, add view, razor view, select this one and provide the view name as dashboard.cs. And this is going to be a very simple view, going to display the what I can say user information. So this is going to be whatever the full name and whatever your username. And here also it is going to show you one logout option. So this is fine. So now what I'm going to do is to make you understand, to make you understand the cookies concept very well. I'm going to create a few more views. This is not related to your real-time application. Whatever your requirement, that's what we have already done. But to understand how to set the cookies, how to access the cookies data, whether the cookie data is set, can I access the cookie data in a view, right? Once I clear the cookie data, then can I again get the data? So to make you understand all these things very clearly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another controller. It is only for the testing purpose. That controller name is going to be cookie controller. So let me create this controller. And inside this controller, let me add few, what I can say, pages. So one is about cookie space. It is going to discuss what is cookie and it will provide you options for how to test the cookies functionality. So this is going to be another page where it is going to set the cookie. Right? It is going to create one cookie with the name demo cookie with this value, and then it is going to provide this message, and this message we are going to render in the page, and it is going to tell that one cookie with this name has been set. This is going to my read sample cookie, means once I click on this method, right, page, it is going to read this demo cookie from the cookies, and it is going to show, right, whether this cookie value is null. If it is null, cookie not found, and that message it is going to display. So this is going to my delete sample cookie. So whatever the demo cookie we have created, that is we have deleted, and then we are going to display this message. And this method, view cookies in views, this action method is going to show you how you can access the cookies information within a view. So from the action method, you can directly access something like this. So from the action method, you can use this request.cookies. But same thing, how I can use this thing within a view. So that is what I'm going to show inside this views. So let us proceed and create this views one by one. Let me start with this about cookies view. So add view. So this is going to a very simple view. It is going to show some text data related to cookies, what is cookies, and it is going to show you that we have provided some navigation button to set, read, and delete sample cookie. Please test the same. So there is nothing special within this view. So set sample cookie. So once the cookie is being set, it is going to provide the information that the cookie has been set, right, and you can retrieve the data, right, using the retrieve method, or you can delete the data using the delete cookie menu. So that is what. So here, whatever the message is written by the view bag, that is what we are going to read here. So here we have set this one, and that data we are displaying here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this read sample cookie. It is going to read the data, and again it is going to display the data from the view bag. So let me go ahead and create this read sample cookie. Okay. Next also, let me go ahead and create this delete sample cookie. After delete, it is going to display that message that the cookie has been deleted, so that we can test. And finally, this view cookies in read option, right? So in this case, I'm going to show you how you can read the data, right? I mean cookie data from a view. So let me provide the name view cookies. See, in this case, right, within the action method, your request object is there, your response object is there. So you can access the request object and response object directly within your controller action method. But you cannot access this response object and request object directly within a view. So in order to access that, what I need to do, we need to inject this right, HTTP context accessor, and this HTTP context accessor belongs to this package. If you go to the definition, then you will see Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.HTTP is the package. So that package I have passed import, then I inject. So in this case, what is happening now? If you look at the account controller, so in the account controller, what is happening? Now in the account controller, we are injecting this user store service using the constructor. So using the constructor, we are injecting the service. But in views, do you have any constructor? No. In views, if you do not have any constructor, but we want some service, then what I need to do, I need to use this add injected directive, and whatever your interface name and whatever the variable name you want to provide, or whatever the class name you want to provide, that is what you need to provide. For example, this is similar to this one. So here, whatever the constructor is doing, that is taking the user service instance, then using this instance, you can access the methods. The same thing is done by this statement. So here, the framework is going to inject an instance of a HTTP context accessor. This HTTP context accessor provides the options to access the request object and the response object. So here you can see, if you want to access the request object data, you have to use HTTP context accessor. From the HTTP context object to go to the request object. From the request object, you can access the cookies collection and whatever the cookie data you want to retrieve. Same in the case of a use. Clear? Okay. Now, next, what I'm doing here, I'm showing whether this cookie is available or this cookie is available. Now what is next? Next, you can see in this case, if I'm using this IER, and if I'm using this user store service, or if I'm using this IHTTP contextor where the framework is going to inject the instance, do I need to register this user service and this IHTTP contextor to the dependency injection container within the program class? Yes or no?
Yes.
So that is what we are going to do. So before that, what I'm going to do is to make the page looks beautiful, I'm going to modify the layout page. So layout page means it is a common page, you can say. So this is going to make, this is going to add the required, right, what I can say menus, and it will give more, right, it will give you a better look for your application, right? And here again, you can see using the context.request.cookies.context key. And here I'm checking whether the right user is logged in, whether the right, what I can say, whatever the current action, that is what it is going to display. So if the current action is this one, then it is going to apply some kind of a, right, what I can say, style sheet. Style sheet means that is going to be highlighted, right? So now what I need to do next I need to register these services into the program class file. So let me go ahead. So by default, cookies is enabled, so you do not need to do anything special here. You just need to use two services, user store and this IHTTP context accessor, right? So so here I'm registering this as a singleton. So I don't want to create this instance again and again. Why? Because if you look at the user store service, it is going to contain some data, and this data I want to access, right, multiple times. Means this is for one request, for multiple requests, the data is not going to be changed. But in your case, if you, whenever you are going to work with any database, then you have to mark this as a scoped service. And again, this IHTTP contextor, I don't want to create this instance, right? Again and again, it is a common. See, the point what you need to remember, that if the data is common, which is not going to change, if an instance is going to be, doesn't make sense to create the instance again and again. If the data is not going to be right, if, when the data is going to be user specific, at that time you have to use some different kind of services, right? But if it is specific to all the user, which is going to be constant, which is going to be remains the same throughout the application, better to use a add singleton service. So with these changes, now let us proceed and see right, whether this is working as expected or not. First of all, let me run the application. Okay, so this is my page about cookie set cookie read cookie, and this is my login method. So here, what I need to do, I need to provide my password 12345 6 and checked this checked one and click on the login button. So once you click on this one, right, you can see user is logged in. So here it is showing your name and this is logout. So now if you open F12, then if you go to the cookies, then this is my domain name. So on which port number it is working? 72181. So this is my port number. So inside this port number, right, I have already tested this one. So let me delete all these things, so which is not for this application, because that localhost application I run many times. So that is the reason why this session cookies and all these things you can see now. Now in this case, you can see when the login is completed successfully, right? When the login is completed successfully. So this is my login method. How many cookies I have set?
2 cookies.
What is the cookie key name?
User ID and user.
User ID.
User ID and username. And whatever value we have provided, so the cookie name is user ID, username. Value is 10 John, because user ID we have stored here. What is the user ID of John? 1. What is the username? This. So this information, it is stored in the browser or not? What is the domain? Domain is this one, localhost, path is this one. When it is going to be expired, at the date and the time is also mentioned. It is HTTP use, HTTP only, and it is a secure cookie. So that is also what we have set. So it is going to use HTTP only, and it is going to be a secure cookie. Clear? Now, where the data is stored, is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, now let me log out this one. So once I log out, that cookie is deleted or not?
Yes.
right? And if you see, guys,
Excuse me,
remember,
Prana. Prana,
some of the
excuse me.
cookies, some of the cookies are internally used. So what is this? Now, whenever you are providing some right button click, right? Whenever you are creating some kind of a form where you are creating, for example, that concept we are not yet discussed, right? If you see, so when the button is clicked, show in the layout page, right? Not in the layout page, in the dashboard page. So here you can see this logout. So whenever you are clicking this button, internally the server is going to maintain some cookies. And how the server is going to maintain those cookies internally, we'll discuss one concept, right? Validate anti-forgery token request forgery attack. At that time I will explain. But some internal cookies are going to be used by the system.
Excuse me, Prana.
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, the application, the cookies you stored in the application or something. The
Sorry?
application, that is memory application. Yeah. The cookies is stored in there.
No, you don't know what is this. So whenever
No,
you run your application, there's F12. Do you know what you mean by browser developer tool?
yeah.
What is that? Browser developer tool. So here you can see, right? Once you open your application, just press the F12 or function F12. So this will open. It is a default, right? For Google Chrome, Mozilla, they are provided this one. So this
The
application
default.
I have not installed. This is browser specific. So once you open any application, just press F12 or function F12, the browser development tool will be open. So in that browser development tool, that element, console, source, network, performance. So basically, it is going to check how your application is going to be performed, whatever the request is happening, how many memory is consumed. So all these things are going to be provided. Apart from among all this tab, this application tab is going to store something like this. So whatever the local storage, session storage, all these things. So here there is one option called cookies, and here it is going to store all the cookies data. Now what I want to make you understand is, right, for example, I'm sending this request. So in this case, right, you can see I'm sending that request and a user is logged in. So in that case, as I mentioned from the beginning, so here two cookies are going to be set by the server. Yes or no? In which header it is going to set these cookies? In the request header or in the response header?
Response.
Responsive.
Once.
Okay, let us see. So what is the right in this case? This is my login endpoint. So which right? So this method, right? This method is executed based on the login endpoint. So let us try to investigate the login endpoint. So this is my login endpoint. So in the login endpoint, in the response header, did you see two cookies with the key user ID and username? Yes
Yes.
or no?
Yes.
Yes.
So basically, if you if you see whatever we discussed from the beginning, so who is going to set the right cookies? Server is going to set the cookies. How it is going to set? That what we have discussed this one. But when it is set, right, it is going to be carried to the browser in the response header, right? That response header, in the response header, it is going to set the cookies information using the key set cookie. So this is my response header, and here the header name is set cookie. And one header per cookie or not. So if I'm setting two cookies, so there are two header or not,
Yes.
right? Now what I'm going to do, I'm clearing this one. Now I'm accessing this page one more time. So in this case, right, when I'm accessing this again, and again it is showing me as a logged in user. So at that time, when the browser going to send the data, if the cookie is available, then it is going to share the cookie in the request header or response header. Browser means always request. Server means always response. So in this case, how many cookies, right? How many cookie header it is going to send? One or multiple?
One.
One. And that header is going to combine all the cookies separated by comma. So to understand this, right, you can see there is no response header. So in this case, you can see this is my request header. So in the request header, is it using the cookie? And whatever, see, this is the other cookie which already created, but now you just need to focus this one. So user ID is there, username is there, yes or no,
Yes.
right? So this is how the cookies is being set by the server. This is how the cookies is going to be sent by the browser, and this is where the cookies information is going to be stored in the browser. Anyone having any question?
From the subsequent request, automatically cookie is taking care to send a single request
See, in this case, what is this value?
in memory session.
In this case, what value is being set for the expire time?
Session. There is no expiry.
So this is going to be session cookie. So now what I'm going to do, I'm log out this one. And again, I'm going to log in. And I'm checking this one. So this time it should create what type of a cookie?
Persistent.
Persistent. Is this showing some dead time when the cookie is going to be expired?
Yes.
So this is how the persistent and session cookies are going to be created and managed by the application. Clear or not?
Here I just wanted to ask one question.
Yes, please.
This can be dangerous, no? Means if we are able to see the username and their ID, it can be dangerous.
Then what is my next concept? What I'm going to discuss next? I have already so the heading to you.
Yeah, encryption and decryption.
See, cookies often store right? If your cookie is going to store some sensitive information, and definitely it is going to store the authentication token, user preferences, user roles, permissions, right? Anything. And this is going to be read by anyone. For example, if you look at these cookies, I can update the values here. So here 1, I can update to 11. So then what will happen? The user who is having the ID 11, that information it is going to check. So even if we, if whatever the name, if you want, you can update, you can modify, you can delete. For example, I want to delete, so I can directly delete, no issue. Clear? Deleting why? Selected. Yeah, deleted. So everything is possible, and as the data is going to be stored in the client side, so there is a 100% chance that data can be misused. And to avoid those kind of issues and misuse, right, what we need to do, we need to encrypt the data. So whatever the data we are going to store in the the browser, right, those data needs to be encrypted. And if you look at the application, right, so whatever the previous data, that data is encrypted or it is in plain text. That first cookie, whatever the internal mechanism the browser, the server is using, so that data is in encrypted format or it is in plain text. It is in encrypted. And even whenever you are using the temp data, so temp data also internally using this cookie mechanism. So that temp data is also whatever the data it is going to store, right? That data is going to be encrypted. So for this purpose, what we need to do is we need to use, or what I can say, we need to protect the data. Why we need to protect the data? For confidentiality, for maintaining the data integrity, and definitely if you are going to use some some standard is there GDPR, HIPAA, PCI DSS, right? And they are making it mandatory. So these are some of the what I can say, and that legal standard for web applications, and they are making it mandatory. If you are storing some data in the client browser using cookies, you have to encrypt the data. And the good thing is that ASP.NET Core provide inbuilt support for this one. So cookie encryption can be done automatically in ASP.NET Core MVC application. And for that purpose, what we need to do, we need to use data protection API. So what is data protection API? And data protection API helps the developer encrypt and decrypt the sensitive data easily. So we are not going to use any what I can say, encryption algorithm explicitly, right? That API encrypt method, no explicitly method is required. So no extra libraries is required. So what we need to do, we can make use of this data protection API, which is provided by ASP.NET Core MVC framework, specifically to protect the data when the data is going to be transmitted, right, the data is going to be stored on the client browser, then the data needs to be encrypted, and for that purpose we can make use of this data protection API. So any authentication cookies, CRFs, token, right, other sensitive data, temp data, everything is going to be encrypted, right, by using this data protection API. Internally, whatever the data the server, right, is going to store in the client browser, they internally uses this data protection API. Explicitly, if we are storing some custom cookies, then also we can protect the data. So what you need to do, you have to inject, right, the data protection API into the, right, and then this data protection API provides some method that is basically two method. One is a protect method, which will take the string data, then it will convert that data into, right, what I can say, right, encrypted format, and this on protect method, it is going to take the, right, encrypted data, and it will convert that to plain text. So how we can implement this? It is going to be three-step process. What are the steps? First of all, you have to inject this iData protection API. I mean, you are going to use this one, so that instance you need to inject. So how you can inject? The way we are injecting other services, in the same way, we need to inject with this iData protection provider instance. Clear? And then once you provide right, provide this instance, then you can create one protector instance, right? Data protection data protector instance. How? Now by creating this create protector, and to this create protector method, you need to provide one purpose string. So what is this purpose string, right? For example, right, if you can consider this purpose string is nothing but your secret key. Sir, what do you mean by secret key? Can anybody tell me what is the use of a secret key in encryption? Because using that secret key, it is going to encrypt the data. Again, if I'm going to decrypt the data, I need to use the same
Secret key.
secret key, or I need to use a different secret key.
Same secret.
Same secret key. Similarly, for example, in your application, you can create multiple right, a secret key. One secret key for right, uh, product controller, another secret key for, right, payment controller, another secret key for authentication controller. So in the same manner, right, whatever the purpose string you provided while creating the data protector instance, the same secret key, right, is going to be used to, right, what I can say, decrypt the data. So as simple as it is, whatever the purpose string used to encrypt the data, the same purpose string is required to decrypt the data. And this purpose string enable us to create, right, a different data protector with a different purpose string, so that the different part of our application can encrypt and decrypt the data using different purpose string, right? So first of all, what is important? First of all, you need to inject this iData protector to your controller. So see, it is not mandatory to control any service class, right? Wherever you want this thing, you can provide. The second thing, what you need to do is, now you need to encrypt the data. First of all, you need to store the data. Second, you need to retrieve the data. For storing the data, now what you need to do, you need to call this a protector. You have already created that protector instance. Now you need to call the protect method, and whatever the plain text data, that what you need to pass. So here, what data you are getting? You are getting the encrypted data. Now that encrypted data you need to store in the cookie. Clear this part?
Yes.
Clear now. So how to decrypt the data? So to decrypt the data, again the same mechanism you need to use, right? The same data protector API must be there, and here you need to call the onProtect method by passing the protect. So first of all, whenever you access the data from the cookie, you will get the encrypted data, and that encrypted data you need to pass to this onProtect method, which is going to return you the decrypted text. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Let us understand this thing practically. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to modify the account controller. So here I'm not modifying anything. So here additionally I'm injecting this data protector instance. So data protector instance I have initializes, and using this data provider, I'm calling this create protector method, which is going to return me the data protector instance. And using this data protector instance, whatever we discussed, that what I'm doing. So before storing the data, I'm encrypting the data, and that encrypted user ID and password I'm storing in the response cookie. Similarly, right, while I'm going to retrieve the data, right, this is my dashboard method. First of all, I'm retrieving the user ID. And in that case, right, what I'm doing, please observe, I'm retrieving the data. If this data is null or empty, I'm simply redirecting to the login page. Again, I'm going to, if the data is available, then I'm already decrypting the data by calling this onProtect method. If this data is able to convertible to integer type, that is fine. If not, then we are redirecting to the login page. We are assuming the data is invalid. If the data is converted to integer, then we are fetching the user information from the database. If this user is null, we are redirecting to the login page, else we are returning the same data. So with these changes, now let us run the application and see whether the data is going to be stored in the form of, I mean that encrypted data it is storing or not. So let me run the application. So let me go to the login page, login. So now, okay, open F12, go to this one. Now user ID and user password, they are same or they are different? I mean, they are storing in the form of a plain text or it is encrypted. Right. Now you might go one question, sir, why the purpose string? See, if the purpose string is not used, then if they are right, I mean, if it's a default one means they are right. If you know that I'm a .NET developer and this application is built using .NET, so I can take this one and I can write some logic and where I can write what I can say, decrypt the data. And that is to avoid that thing, right? They are introducing this purpose string. Without this purpose string, right, you cannot decrypt the data. Clear why we are using this purpose string?
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, so we can write any string here.
Yeah, anything. Whatever you want, you can style. Suppose I want to write a pronoun, that is fine, no issue. Okay. So in that case, it is also going to work. So any string. See, I'm getting this data as expected. So any string.
Yeah,
Clear, guys?
yeah, yeah.
Right. So this is all about what are the limitation we have discussed. Limited size, maximum per cookie is going to be 4 KB. If you are going to store more data, then cookies is not the solution. Cookies can be intercepted and manipulated. It's not handled properly. So you have to encrypt the data. You have to enable HTTPS. You have to enable secure. Otherwise, your data is going to be at risk. It is always going to store on the client side. Definitely storing the data on the client side is right. Make a hole for the data theft. Performance impact every time you send the data, right? For example, you are storing huge amount, right? You are storing some 10, 15, 20 cookies there. So in each request, all this data are going to be sent from the client to the server, which is not a good approach. Sometimes this will degrade your application performance. So browser restriction and user preference. If you want, you can completely disable cookies right on your machine. If you disable cookies, then the application is not going to right what I can say work as expected and not suitable for storing sensitive or large data. Definitely, sensitive data like password we are not going to store even on the server side. Any personal information if you want to store or if you want to store data which is going to be more than 4 KB, right? Like for example, you are developing on e-commerce application, you added some 20, 30 products into the shopping cart. So that is going to be very heavy. So those data you cannot store on the client side. So for that purpose, you need to use the other solution that is going to be session. Clear, guys?
Yeah.
Anyone having any question, they can ask me. And guys, tomorrow we have also a session. Tomorrow we will discuss session concept. That is also going to take more than 1 hour. So this is all about cookies. Anyone having any question related to cookies, they can ask.
I just wanted to ask,
Yes, please.
whenever we are passing some uh, money value or transaction, If you are booking a ticket and we are passing some 400 rupees or 500 rupees, shall it go through the cookie or
First
and
of all,
in
you
the
just tell
in
me. See, first of all, you just tell me. What is the purpose of a cookies? Cookies is basically going to store some small amount of data which is required to remember the user, right, by the server. So do you think that whatever money you are going to send, is this required by the server to identify the user?
so other way, say we are comparing some two websites like Flipkart and Amazon, and they are having some 3-4 products where we are comparing all those products. And later we decided that okay, we want to go through Flipkart or an Amazon. So anyway, this say cookies will be used in that case.
So first of all, what is your requirement? I'm not getting. So if I'm comparing two websites, so what is the use of a cookie in that case? So see, first of all, what I understood. I think your basic is not going to be is not clear. What is the purpose of a cookies? So cookies basically is to store some small amount of user information, which is going to be specific to your authentication. And for example, that JWT token going to store some small amount of information like the user ID and password. So whatever we have discussed here. So that is the use of a cookies and session. So we are not going to store the right huge amount of data, some sensitive data. So that is not meant for cookies. And coming to
Okay,
your
I got
example,
it.
comparing two websites, I don't even I'm not understanding what is the problem statement. If you are comparing website A and website B, what is the problem statement here? What exactly you want to achieve?
Okay, I got it. I got it.
No, see, I might not be right understanding your question properly, right? So for that purpose, you need to elaborate a little bit. I mean, what is your problem statement and what is your solution? That's what I want to understand.
No, I think I was a bit confused uh, between this passing the values from the server to the client and the client to the
See, first
server.
of all, see this value. See, there are two types of data. One data which is required, which is going to be passed as part of the core string, as part of the URL, as part of the request body, as part of the route. That is going to be different one. Cookies, they are going to be sent automatically by the browser. So for sending the cookie, as a developer, we are not going to do anything special. We are only going to send the cookie and we are going to retrieve the cookie. How the browser is going to handle that, that is not as part of our right concern. But whenever
Uh,
we are consuming something, right, if you want to pass some specific data, right, for example, you want to create one order. For creating the order, you need the product information. So those data, if you want, you can pass in the request body, you can pass in the query string, you can pass as part of the route. Clear?
Actually, sometimes we keep the data in the session, right?
What is session? We have not yet discussed now. So session is different
Uh,
one,
that's what. That time I will ask this question.
right? Because session, for example, if you are developing some e-commerce application, the user is not logged in, but the user adding some ready product into the cart. Then those cart information we need to store. Where we need to store session. Session means where? Session means in the right server side. Then if the data is stored on the server side, then how the browser will identify, how the browser and server will decide that this data is for that particular user. So that concept we will discuss tomorrow, right?
Okay. Okay.
For that purpose, right? I have created different example, right? That is going to be some kind of e-commerce application kind of example. I will discuss this one. So this is your product catalog page. Here you are showing the product listing. View details. It will open this page. Here you are clicking on this add to cart button. That product will be added into your cart. And then here you can see this is my cart listing page. So here whatever the data I'm showing here, this data I'm fetching from the session. So
Okay.
this example I will show you tomorrow.
Okay.
Anyone having
Pranay,
any question, guys?
Pranay, one question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
If we are using multiple databases and I mean, if there is a load balancer, will this work? Memory of
See, multiple database means what?
I mean, suppose in the cloud, if there is a multiple databases, I mean, if the number of requests are too high coming, so by using load balancing,
You have to remember two things. So multiple database is not there. It might be multiple instances of your application because database is not going to handle the incoming HTTP request.
yeah, multiple instances.
Yeah, multiple instances means load balancer is required. Because without load balancer, when the request comes, so how you can decide whether that request is going to be processed by server 1 or server 2 or server 3? That is load balancer concept. And that is what I'm going to discuss in microservices when I'm going to discuss. Mostly, Monday, I'm going to start microservices. As part of microservices, I'm going to set up, completely. I'm going to show you, how you can set the load balancer, how the load balancer is working, what are the different algorithm it is using internally to decide whether to, so that it should not be like that. Out of 100 requests, 90 requests are going to one server and 10 requests are going to be to other server. It should not be like that. Equally, if not 100% equally, but eventually it should be like something like 32, 35, 40, thing similarly. How that logic is going to build, that is what I'm going to discuss. Clear?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, sir, I have one more
Your,
scenario.
your voice is very low. Please be louder.
Okay, now it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So this you have shown using MVC and whole application is in .NET. Suppose we have a API and application is Angular or in React. In that scenario, also this will work, right?
Yeah, 100%. Sorry. So whenever you are talking about web API, it will not work. Right? For web API, it will not work. Why it will not work? In the case of web API, you have to use something called token-based authentication.
Okay, JWT.
Yes, JWT you can use, basic authentication you can use. Some authentication mechanism is there. And that is what we have already discussed, right? So what is JWT authentication? What is basic authentication? How you can implement role-based authentication? So all these things we have already discussed in Web API. Clear? And
Yeah.
this is the main reason. As we are storing the data in the sessions, I mean in the cookies. Cookies are very right. What I can say, not that strong. They are making a hole for the data theft. That is the reason why people are migrated from the session and cookies to JWT based authentication, token based authentication, and other things.
So, Pranay, in modern applications, there is a minimum use of cookies, right? Now, the people we are migrating JWT.
Yes. Everyone nowadays, if you are developing application, means 100% JWT.
Okay, but is
But
there
if you are
anything where we use cookie in modern applications?
For example, if you are developing the single page application, right? For example, ASP.NET Core MVC application. So in ASP.NET Core MVC, there is no already client server. Different client application, server application is not there. Here only my client page is there. Here my server code is also going to be there. So if your client application and server application both are hosted on the same, in this case, right? In this case, you can say my right domain is going to be same. From that same domain, I'm accessing the same data. So in this particular kind of application, or if you are developing any application, ASP.NET MVC, or here ASP.NET Core MVC, in this case type of application, you can make use of session and cookies. But when it comes to some different kind of application, for example, here you whenever we are developing RESTful services, so web browser they understand session and cookies. What about mobile app? What about the desktop application? What about the console application? So whenever you develop any RESTful services, they are not limited to only web application. Android app, they can consume your services. iOS app, they can consume your services. A simple desktop application, he can also consume your application services. So in the case of a desktop application, Android application, iOS application, is browser available? No. If browser
No.
are not available, then how you can write how that session and cookies is going to work internally? It is not possible, completely impossible. So if you are developing RESTful services means what? There is no session, there is no cookies.
Okay.
Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else having any question, guys? Yes. So if right, then when these cookies are going to be used now, if you are developing the client application, then in that client application itself, he might be storing the data in the cookies. For example, the web server return the cookie, right? I mean the web server return the token. So that token you can store in the cookie. Clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then from the cookie, right, you can return the data. And from the data, you can, once you retrieve the data, then you can right, make a request to the server wherever you want to set the head right authentication token in the operation header or wherever you can pass the data. Okay. Anyone else having any question, guys?